This is the College Football Connection Podcast with Alvin Reed, Bradford Bruns, and Marty Jenkins on 101 ESPN.
In the midst of yet another wild and wacky Wednesday out there on the weather front, we are here to provide a little bit of levity as only the college football platform can afford. How's it going, everyone? Bradford Bruns back with you live from our studio in Creve Coeur for this bite-sized edition of the College Football Connection, only on the 101 ESPN YouTube channel, plus 101ESPN.com. We have officially entered that month of June, and yet seemingly out there, we cannot leave behind the frenetic, ridiculous weather conditions. So however you happen to be consuming our product today, we appreciate it. And first and foremost, please stay safe in the midst of another round of storms battering the St. Louis region. Now, as we established, you may be questioning yourself, what exactly is transpiring at this moment? It seems to be that brief instance of quiet, pardon the pun, before the storm across campuses nationwide. But by the same token, we did have an announcement, namely from the University of Missouri-Columbia just last week, on Thursday to be precise, about some key dates and kickoff times for the 2025 season ahead. So, to get into some of the specifics, beginning with that season opener at Memorial Stadium on August the 28th, which previously had been bumped up to a Thursday evening showcase again. This will be the fourth consecutive year in which the Tiger faithful, in advance of Labor Day, will be able to take in the proceedings before the weekend. Week number one, really, of the college football season even begins. It'll be a 6:30 p.m. kickoff, so falling in line with what we have seen, what we have observed, and what we have enjoyed over the past few seasons for Eli Drinkwitz and company, and then the week thereafter. I know a lot of people out there, I know you guys are eagerly anticipating the first clash against old rival, perpetual rival KU, for the first time since back in 2006. Yeah, we're talking about the Big 12 when both teams were wrestling with each other in that capacity. The long-awaited rematch versus those Jayhawks. We knew it would occur on September the 6th. That would be a Saturday, week number 2. But we didn't know the kickoff time. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle it in for the mid-afternoon slate. The SEC confirming it's going to be a 2:30 p.m. kickoff. And then the following weekend when Louisiana comes to town, yes, in the midst of that gauntlet of home opponents to begin the 2025 campaign, Mizzou fans are hoping in a very advantageous way, Louisiana comes to town for a 3 p.m. kickoff. So after that point, who knows? You would hope, if you are a member of MU Nation, that you are holding on to that 3-0 mark, and then the fun truly begins against South Carolina and the rest of the SEC gauntlet. We're actually going to revisit a conversation that the Fast Lane, of which I was a part last week, that we held, in which we talked about some of the under-the-radar CFP contenders at this point in time in early June. We'll get to that here in a minute on the CFC, but in case you missed it as well, I know that this topic has been bandied about consistently for weeks and months, it would seem, on end, as far as what is the configuration going to be beyond 2025 as far as the college football playoff field. We know in the here and now you're going to get round number 2, year number 2 of the 12-team configuration. Largely, it went well a year ago. Yes, you had your fair share of blowouts in the first round, but it would seem as though that would be the case regardless of the makeup of the structure, right? So many individuals certainly are really speculating and contemplating in 2026 and thereafter. Are you going to move to 16? Are we talking about the 4 automatic qualifiers in the form of the top 4 seeds, which was heavily discussed according to numerous reports just a few weeks ago, or maybe a newfangled notion of having the top 5 conference champions again and then adding 11 at-large berths? Well, that's precisely what last week in Orlando, the Big 12 commissioner actually was discussing discussing, and also lending his support, throwing his support, and endorsing the real prohibitive titans league-wise in the Big Ten and the SEC as being the driving forces behind whatever is going to materialize and the picture that is going to come to fruition and take shape following 2025. Now, the reality, guys, is that we know very little about what is going to be happening months from now, okay, in 2026, because the governing bodies in play here, the next meeting among the FBS commissioners, it's going to happen in a couple of weeks on June the 18th. But a decision as far as the Constitution for 2026, that doesn't ultimately have to even take effect until December, wouldn't you know it, shortly before the latest run-up of action leading into the next 12-team set of action. So all of that is still very much to be determined, but it is exceedingly fun to dissect and discuss as we move along here in some of the lean months before the action truly begins with fall camps and then your regular season. There are several games even preceding MU and Central Arkansas. Case in point, Kansas State, Iowa State in Dublin for week 0 around that mid-August point. Bradford Bruns with you once again on the College Football Connection on this rainy and wild Wednesday from Creve Coeur. But before we exit during this condensed edition of the program, once again, wanted to revisit a conversation, and a fun one at that we had on 101 ESPN just a few days ago, in which I prompted the guys of the Fast Lane. It was the full crew with the exception of Andrew Marsh, Anthony Stalter, Jamie Rivers, and our resident Super Bowl champion, Kerry Davis, about perhaps some under-the-radar CFP hopefuls and wannabes entering 2025. It is more than due time to be able to speculate, to run some of your thoughts, let them run wild. And so we discussed who is in play, who may be jostling for position, trying to ascend and move up of that board, and each and every person, not surprisingly, had some drastically different opinions. So please take a listen.
The Illini could be this year's Indiana, what they were last year. Make it to the college football. Now, Indiana got beat up on once they made it to the college football playoffs. I don't see that as that being the future for my Illini. So, yeah. Make a push there.
Kerry, if you're going to bat for the Illini, I don't necessarily think I'm serious here. I'm not pulling a BK-esque maneuver here of holding a certain program on high, but why not MU being in the same ballpark? And I say that because, yes, you have a fundamental concern about exactly who is going to be the number 1 under center. But I'm looking at a defense here that very well could be a top 10 unit in the entire country. In Hardy, the running back, the transfer running back from ULM, you could have a top 5 back in the country too. And there is a lot of offensive line continuity when you take away an Armand Membu. I think, honestly, this team could make more waves in the SEC. I'm not saying it's going to be Georgia. I'm not saying it's going to be Bama necessarily or Texas. But in that next tier, it's definitely, to me, a squad that is worthy of CFP early consideration, because look at the schedule too. You start the home schedule with 5-6 straight games, for crying out loud. You're not playing the heavyweights in the conference.
You got to play South Carolina in Game 4. I think that's going to be a tough game.
Okay.
I was looking at South Carolina
at home. At home. That's going to be a game.
So I was looking at South Carolina. You asked for like under the radar. Right?
I like it. I like where you're going.
Now they did lose to Illinois in the Citrus Bowl last year. But given
Sellers is he's really
stud.
He's a really good quarterback.
So I like Lenore Sellers. The defense started to play a lot better toward the end of the season last year.
They lost some guys though. They lost.
Who hasn't?
They're okay. You're right. I'm sorry. Let me shut up. Continue.
It's about winning championships. I think South Carolina could be an interesting playoff team heading in. Probably not enough to win a championship, but I think South Carolina, just based on Sellers.
Yeah, and that's the biggest difference to me. Yeah, between, say, a South Carolina and a Tennessee, which is in the same ballpark, I think. However, what happened a couple of months ago, Tennessee lost its guy, and I'm not even going to say that Iamaleava was on the same level as what we saw in the second half of 2024 from Sellers.
Oh, no.
Not even close.
I don't think so.
Close.
Yeah, I think that he had a better first half than he did second half. Sellers took off.
Yeah, he got better as the year went on.
Yeah.
But South Carolina lost their 2 top tacklers. They both were drafted in the second round.
Running back.
Well, cross them off then.
So I don't know where they're going to be. I thought last year they had a really good team. But I honestly believe, and I can say this, I'm not being a homer when I say this about Illinois. I think that this is going to be a really good season for them.
They're good.
And it's going to, they're returning, I think they're returning like 18 or 19 of their starters from last year's team. So for me, that's a team that won 10 games, returning a lot down. They're losing Pat Bryant, who was drafted in the 3rd round to the Broncos. He was their best receiver. But they are going to be a really good team and a tough team to deal with. They just my opinion.
All right.
Yeah.
There you have it. So basically, Mizzou and South Carolina, September 20th, will decide the under-the-radar situation for both teams.
You know I have to lean into it a little bit, play the role per se, but much like Stoltz, I do have some backing in that corner because I, for one, cannot wait until Sellers and company arrive in Como. That is going to be one heck of a collision. Imagine some of the fireworks that could be unfolding on that occasion, even against a Missouri defense that is justifiably lauded, as I said just a few minutes ago, and yet in the early going of the schedule, what a test. Despite some of the very big expectations that the fan base justifiably will have about that first quarter plus of the schedule for the Tigers. Always a good time, though, hanging out with the guys of the Fast Lane, 2 to 6 each and every weekday. Stoltz, Jamie Rivers, Kerry Davis, and usually Andrew Marsh as well. It's been fun, STL, hanging out with you for a few minutes here on the latest edition of the College Football Connection. Be safe out there, and until we meet again, don't worry. We have a few things cooking. We have a few things in the hopper as we advance toward August. Maybe some conference and team-related previews. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This has been Bradford Bruns, and until next time, take care. We will catch you extremely soon.
Thanks for listening to the College Football Connection podcast.